Esmeralda would meet her betrothed weekly at the produce market, accompanied by her younger sisters, of course. Neither she nor Richard cared about what hoops they had to jump through, as long as they were able to see each other and share a touch or two. The couple spoke often of their upcoming nuptials. Neither wanted a large wedding with frills or many people they barely knew. They simply wanted each other. The thought of their first night as husband and wife was a pleasant one, too. Richard's mother was happy that her son had found the love of his life. Even if it was the daughter of the woman her husband had never stopped loving. Clyde loved his sister more than anyone else. She was kind and gentle with him, and he appreciated that. Clyde's birthday was today, and he was aging into a child. Clyde blew out his candles and wished for a different future. Clyde's childhood trait is amusing. He is a jokester. His aspiration is to be a social butterfly, much to his father's dismay. Richard and Esmeralda continued to meet secretly. Unbeknownst to their parents, they decided that they would share their first kiss in privacy instead of in front of their family in a church. It was magical and everything that Esmeralda had dreamed of. Once they shared their first kiss, they couldn't stop. Their teenage hormones were running rampant, and they were just too attracted to one another. Esmeralda kept her promise to her father because she did not want to be a bad wife to Richard. Richard then gave Esmeralda a promise ring for her to wear on her finger until she was able to wear her wedding ring. Esmeralda accepted the ring and wore it with pride. The couple wished that they could be of age already and finally be together as husband and wife. Esmeralda told her father of she and Richard's plan to wed the week following her 18th birthday. He was thrilled for his daughter and his wallet. Isabel loved love and wanted to hear every detail of her sister's romance. Isabel longed for a love story like Esmeralda's one day. The twins were aging into teenagers today, so Esmeralda baked them a special cake. Her cooking skills had vastly improved in the last few years, so her cakes actually tasted good now. She blessed the cake with so much love and adventure for her younger sisters to experience during this next phase of life. Isabel was tired of living in her sister's shadow, so she insisted that she blew her candles out before Victoria for the first time ever. Victoria was not happy about this, but Esmeralda allowed it. Isabel's teenage trait is amusing. She loves to make others laugh. This contradicts her moody traits, so she has very dysregulated emotions. Her teenage aspiration is to have a soulmate. Victoria blows out her candles after her twin with a chip on her shoulder. Her birthday wish was to be far away from this family, as she was clearly so different from and treated her like she didn't at her. Victoria's teenage trait is that she is thrill-seeking. Her teen years were about to get interesting. The twins aging up into teenagers made them a little more sentimental towards one another. They were not close anymore, but they came into this world together and needed to lean on the other for support. They vowed to try to work through their differences and to be nicer and supportive. Isabel hoped she would get her best friend back. Joseph spoke to his son about the importance of maintaining the farm. He explains that they weren't able to live the life they had without the crops in the fields. Now that Clyde was old enough, he was going to learn how to properly care for the crops. He would spend every free moment with his father in the fields. Clyde worked so hard to please his father, but he did not care for the hard labor. It was not enjoyable for him. Esmeralda often went outside to watch her brother working hard on the fields. It broke her heart to see the sadness on Clyde's face as he learned the family business. She wished he could have a different future. She showered him with compliments and told him what a great job he was doing. She knew that if she didn't say anything, Clyde would never hear a word of praise. Their father was not one for compliments. He was ungrateful for his children. After Joseph would dismiss his son for the day, Clyde would do things that actually brought him joy. He liked to play in the water and try to catch frogs. It wasn't that he didn't enjoy to be outside. He didn't enjoy to tend to crops. He loved the outdoors. He would even prefer to tend to the animals, but his father told him that it was the women's responsibility. So instead he befriended stray rabbits. They understood him more than his own father did. He thought about running away and living with his rabbit friends often. The twins were given the full responsibility of tending for the animals. Isabel enjoyed this task much more than Victoria did. Isabel felt a connection to some of the animals. There were others, like the llama, that did not like her. Those interactions were her least favorite. She took extra good care of their cow, Grace. She had heard that her late sister Frances had built a bond with the cow, and she wanted to honor her in any way she could. Victoria stuck to caring for the chickens because it was the least amount of work. She thought it absurd that her father was able to pass off all of his responsibilities to his children so he could drink all day. She thought he was a pathetic excuse for a father. Esmeralda's house duties and child rearing had dissipated since her siblings' age up, but she still found herself counting down the days until she moved in with Richard. He came to visit her often with the permission of her father. Seeing the man that would soon be her husband was the highlight of her week. It was refreshing to see a good man because she thought all men were like her father. She was so thankful for Richard. Now that the twins were teenagers, he sat them down to have the same conversation he had with Esmeralda 2 years prior. He first spoke to Isabel about the search for her future husband because she was much more compliant than Victoria. Isabel was very excited for the arrangement because her father picked so well for Esmeralda. She was confident her father would find her soulmate during the search. Joseph had dreaded this conversation with Victoria because she was strong-willed and did not like being told what to do. He knew she would be eternally unhappy with an arranged marriage, but decided to pursue it anyway. Just like he suspected it would go. Victoria took the news terribly and threatened to run away. True to her word, she snuck out of the house. She decided not to run away just yet, but she had to get away from her useless father. She couldn't believe he would sell her to a stranger and that stranger would be her husband. Arranged marriage was barbaric. She noticed a boy fishing on the docks. He had fiery red hair and a look of concentration on his face. She was intrigued by this perfect stranger. Esmeralda started to teach Isabel how to cook. Isabel was eager to master all of her wifely skills so it would please her future husband. She idolized her sister and thought her to be the picture-perfect future wife. She did not care for all of the scrubbing and polishing that was required of her, as she figured that she would grow to enjoy it if it pleases her husband. Victoria did not want to focus on skills that would please other people, especially not a man. She instead chose to nurture her mind by playing chess. She and Clyde were not very close, but they bonded over their enjoyment of the game. They would confide in one another about their dislike for their father and the fact that their futures were already set in stone. They liked to talk about running away to start new lives. Clyde knew he could never do that to his father, but Victoria knew that if she needed to run away, she could and would do so. As the clock ticked for Esmeralda to turn 18 and wed her sweet Richard, she began to read books regarding parenting and childbirth. She wanted to be the best mother to she and Richard's future children. Victoria returned to the dock where she first saw the cute red-haired boy, and he was there again. His name was Jacob, and he went night fishing to both clear his head and provide for his family. For the first time, someone held Victoria accountable for the brat she was. Jacob told her that she was beautiful, but her attitude wasn't. She was shocked at his honesty and decided in that moment that she had a crush on Jacob. After he told her his observation, Victoria bursted out in laughter. She told Jacob that she thought they would get along great and said that she did not like his personality either. Jacob laughed at this too, and just like that, they became friends. Victoria hugged Debo for the first time and begged to see Jacob again. He told her she knew where to find him, and she rushed home with butterflies in her stomach. Jacob was so luring, and his personality was nothing like she was used to. Joseph found a potential husband for Isabel. They were going to the home of Irving Grubbs III to meet with him so he could decide if he was the right fit for his daughter. It was moments like these that Joseph wished Mia were still with him. Irving came from a long line of oil tycoons, so he was extremely wealthy and came from old money. Joseph focused on charming Irving because aligning their families could prove very profitable for the Bennett line. Even though Irving was 15 years older than Isabel, she found him quite handsome. He was rough around the edges due to the frequent bar fights he engaged in, but it added to his charm. He carried himself with entitlement. Irving was more than satisfied with the beauty of Isabel and agreed to marry her once she was of age. By this point he would be 33, but Joseph saw no issue with this because of the hefty dowry he was being offered. Joseph left the room for a moment so the newly courting couple could become acquainted. Irving told her that she was stunning and could not wait to deflower her on their wedding night. Isabel was intimidated by his forwardness, but smiled at him. Isabel returned home with the biggest smile on her face. Her life would finally have worth because she would be married to a wealthy oil tycoon. She would be the best wife to him. Clyde's training to work in the fields had been completed, so Joseph trusted him enough to tend to the crops for the next harvest season. He was forced to work in the fields in all weather conditions, and he loathed it. Joseph would only assist Clyde on occasion, letting his son become acclimated to the workload. Joseph would not always be around to help him after. Victoria wrote in her journal about her hatred for her father. He was a lazy drunk who saw his daughters as nothing more than a payday. She also wrote about Jacob and the previously unknown emotions that he caused Victoria to feel. Clyde acted out emotionally in the comfort of his room. He would throw paint and other materials on the floor as an act of defiance against his father. He did not yet have the confidence to speak out against him, so he vigorously cleaned the mess. After he felt better, Isabel was Joseph's golden child right now due to the enormous dowry that Irving would pay him once he and Isabel married. It was because of this that Joseph insisted that she be rested and focus on her beauty instead of tending to the animals. In contrast, Joseph punished Victoria for her refusal to have any part of an arranged marriage. Joseph decided the only solution was to teach her a lesson in the form of hard labor. He sat on the hay bale outside every single day and intently watched his daughter care for the animals. Victoria was angry at her father's insistence to control her. She was her own person and fiercely independent, so the thought of being forced into a union for her father's financial gain made her sick to her stomach. She would endure her punishment during daylight, but the night times for her. She would sneak out of the farm and spend time with Jacob because it was the only thing that brought her joy anymore. This was the one thing that her father couldn't take from her. On days that Joseph would bring Clyde to sell the crops from their latest harvest, Victoria snuck off of the farm to spend time with Jacob. Their time spent together felt like a fairy tale. She did not want the old men that her father wanted to sell her off to. She wanted Jacob. He challenged her in every way, but she liked that. He was sarcastic, witty, and every other trait that was compatible with her own. She did not want to be sold like some farm animal. She wanted to choose her husband and the person she wanted to love. That person was Jacob. They were meant to be together, and she wasn't going to allow her father to dictate her love life. For the first time in her life, she made a major life decision completely on her own. She made her intentions with Jacob known by kissing his lips. He was extremely happy that Victoria was the one to make that next step. Weeks after that wonderful interaction with Jacob, she decided to tell her father that she was not going to be a pawn anymore. She told him of her relationship with Jacob and boasted about how much she loved him in hopes it would change her dad's mind. Not shockingly, Joseph took this revelation poorly. He forbade his daughter from ever seeing this poor boy ever again because Jacob had nothing of value to offer Joseph. He informs Victoria that he will look more vigorously for a suitable husband. Esmeralda completed all of her household duties, counted down the days until her 18th birthday so she could be whisked away by her dear Richard. Isabel was also counting down the days until she turned 18 so she could become the wife of a wealthy oil tycoon. Her days of living on this filthy farm were numbered and she would soon want for nothing while living in a luxurious mansion. She couldn't get over her good luck. The day finally came for Esmeralda to age into a young adult. She could hardly contain her excitement. Her young adult trait is serious. The many years of neglect at the hands of her father had caused her to become hardened. Her aspiration is to have a big happy family with the love of her life. After months of negotiations between Joseph and Irving, they came to an agreeable amount for the dowry. Joseph did not want his golden child to lift a finger, so Victoria was stuck cooking the meal that Irving would eat. Clyde set the table for the dinner. He had heard rumors about Irving's violent tendencies and did not want his sister to marry such a monster, so he planned on trying to stop this courtship. Irving arrived at the farm and was unimpressed with the size of the land. It was as big as the servants' quarters on his land. Joseph tried his best to make Irving feel welcome in his home, but the man seemed unsatisfied until he laid eyes on the fair and beautiful Isabel. Victoria reluctantly called everyone to dinner. She found Irving to be absolutely revolting and did not know what her sister saw in him. The dinner was mostly quiet aside from Joseph and Irving speaking about money and politics. In an effort to sabotage the impending union of Isabel and Irving, Clyde made a cheeky comment to the man about how it was lucky he was wealthy. Otherwise, a beauty like his sister wouldn't look twice at him. Irving angrily stomped away from the board and destroyed the dollhouse as an act of retaliation for the boy's unnecessary jab at his looks. Isabel was lucky that she was beautiful, or he would not put up with such disrespect. Isabel and Irving had the opportunity to speak alone together after dinner. Irving spent the majority of their conversation making crass comments about their future wedding night. Isabel was naive to the ways of men and figured this was simply how husbands acted. She was slightly uncomfortable speaking about wifely duties and her deflowering, but he was relentless, so she entered in the conversation. It was her future husband after all. She would get used to being spoken to in this way because that was her duty as his future wife. Her feelings were secondary, just like her father taught her.